At dinner with her family, my girlfriend called me her charity case, right there between the wine refills and the creme brulee. Everyone laughed. Her dad, who once asked if I even had a real job, nearly choked on his steak. I smiled. I smiled through all of it. Then, when the waiter brought the check, I slid an envelope across the table that made her mother gasp out loud. That's when they stopped laughing. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you're watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. They say first impressions are everything, but no one ever tells you what to do when the first impression you make is met with thin smiles and thicker judgment. I remember standing in front of the mirror that night, adjusting the collar of my only tailored blazer, trying to convince myself it looked expensive. It didn't. It looked like effort. And that was always the problem with Sophia's world. Effort was visible, and in their circles, effort was embarrassing. Sophia and I had been together a little over a year by then. We met at a mutual friend's art show in the city, both pretending to care about abstract pieces neither of us understood. She was magnetic in a way that made you lean in, confident, sharp-witted, disarming. She liked that I ran my own business, called me ambitious in those early days, told her friends I was gritty, like that was a compliment. I owned a boutique tech consulting firm, small but profitable, nothing flashy. I worked remote, took clients I believed in, and I was proud of what I built. But proud doesn't always pay well in front of people who think wealth is a birthright. I should have known what I was walking into when Sophia started coaching me on the drive over. Don't bring up politics, she said, fingers tapping the steering wheel. Or student debt. Or your theory about how wedding venues are a scam. I chuckled. What can I talk about? Just smile more, she said, half grinning. My dad already thinks you're too serious. I looked at her, waiting to hear if that was a joke. It wasn't. We pulled up to a sleek, white linen restaurant tucked in one of those gated suburban pockets where Teslas outnumber Toyotas, and the valet is always bored because no one tips. Her family was already seated, a picture-perfect quartet of tasteful privilege. Her father in a crisp button-down and Rolex you weren't supposed to notice, her mother in pearls, and her younger brother, Liam, who looked like he'd stepped off a yacht he didn't pay for. Their smiles were polite, but cool, like I was a stray cat they hadn't agreed to feed. I extended a hand to her father. Nice to see you again, Mr. Whitaker. He shook it, his grip firm and brief. Still doing that tech thing? He asked. It's going well, I said. Just landed 2 new clients last month. Good. Good. He nodded, glancing at Sophia. Glad someone's got stability. Her mother leaned in, her voice a honeyed dagger. And you're working from home, right? That must be so convenient. Some of us barely see our spouses with how much they work. Must be, I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The hostess brought menus. The conversation skated along polite surfaces, vacations, tennis, Sophia's new promotion at her firm. Her father beamed at that. Knew you'd climb fast, he said. You always had that drive. Thanks, Dad, she said, squeezing my knee under the table like I should be fine with all this. Like this was just her family's way. But it wasn't the comments themselves that got under my skin. It was the casual way they said them, as if I wasn't even there. Like they weren't insults, just observations dressed as compliments. Like I should be grateful they were even pretending to be nice. I tried to stay engaged, nodding along, inserting a joke here and there. But about halfway through the appetizers, I heard something that shifted the air. Sophia stepped away to take a phone call. While she was gone, her mom leaned over to her husband and whispered, She always brings home these projects. He chuckled. She's got a type. At least this one's got decent grammar. I stared down at my plate, cutting through the shrimp as if it were the only thing keeping me from saying something I'd regret. Maybe they thought I couldn't hear. Maybe they didn't care. When Sophia returned, I didn't say anything. What could I say? She was glowing, proud to have us all together, blissfully unaware of the micro-cuts bleeding beneath the surface. I let it slide. For her. Later, in the car ride home, she scrolled through her phone, smiling. They liked you, she said. I looked over. You think so? They just have their way of feeling people out, she replied. Give it time. They'll come around. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I couldn't shake the words, projects, type, grammar. They weren't feeling me out. They were feeling me small. A few nights later, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. I wasn't trying to listen. She was in the kitchen, laughing loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. No, he's not like the others, she said. He's not flashy, but he's sweet, and he tries. Her friend said something I couldn't make out, followed by Sophia's voice again. I know, but maybe that's what I need. Someone humble. Humble. He tries. I stood there in the hallway, frozen. It wasn't cruel, not exactly. But it wasn't love either. It was charity. I went back to my desk, stared at my laptop screen, and realized that somewhere along the way, I'd been turned into someone to root for, not someone to respect. A narrative she could share. Look at me, loving someone without a trust fund. I didn't bring it up. Not that night. Not the next morning. Because I wasn't sure yet if I was being paranoid or finally seeing things clearly. But I decided something, quietly, to myself. I wouldn't be laughed at again. And if they ever made me feel like a punchline in public, I'd make damn sure they choked on it. The second dinner wasn't supposed to be formal. Sophia pitched it like a casual night out, a chance to get to know each other better, she said, like the first round hadn't already drawn blood. But the second she texted me the name of the restaurant, I knew better. Kavanaugh's wasn't casual. It was the kind of place where the waiter memorized your name and the wine list came with its own binder. The kind of place where every couple at every table looked like they were hiding something behind perfect teeth. "Wear the blazer again," Sophia said as we got dressed. "You looked good in it." I looked at her in the mirror. She was slipping in pearl studs and reapplying lipstick, already in that polished, porcelain mode she used around them. I adjusted my collar, didn't bother pointing out how stiff it made me feel. Dinner was set for 7:30. We were the last to arrive. Her parents, her brother Liam, and his new girlfriend, a girl named Zoe who barely spoke but looked like she knew how to pose for a picture. We slid into the last two seats, and I tried to remind myself to breathe. The waiter poured wine before we even ordered. Sophia's dad nodded at me. "Still working remote?" he asked, like it was a trick question. "Yes," I replied. "Just on board to startup out of Seattle." "Ah," he said. "The remote life. Can't say it feels like real work to me, but to each his own." Sophia's mother laughed softly. "Well, not everyone needs to be in a boardroom to be productive, dear." "Sure," he said, sipping his wine. "But I always say, you can't build a legacy in sweatpants." They all laughed. Even Sophia. I let it roll off. One comment wasn't worth the reaction. Not yet. The meal dragged through courses that I couldn't pronounce and wasn't hungry for. Sophia's brother told some long, meandering story about a golf trip to Scottsdale, full of names I didn't know and jokes I wasn't supposed to get. I nodded along, kept my hands folded. I was good at being quiet, at biding my time. But it was somewhere between the duck confit and the dessert menus that the moment happened, the one that snapped the whole mask in half. Sophia had just finished telling a story about how we met. Again, and her father rolled his eyes playfully. "So," he said, "what was it about this one that did it, Soph?" Sophia grinned, flicked her hair back. "Oh, you know me. Always looking for a fixer-upper." A few polite laughs. Then she added, "He's my little charity case." And everyone laughed. Like really laughed. Her dad leaned back in his chair, wheezing. Her brother actually clapped the table. Her mother smiled behind her wine glass like it was all just so precious. And me? I sat there. Still. Stone still. I forced a chuckle. Just one. Because anything more would have cracked my teeth. I looked at Sophia. She was glowing. Proud. Amused with herself. And it hit me. All at once. This wasn't a joke to her. Not really. She meant it. In that soft, condescending way some people do when they say something awful and call it wit. She thought it was cute. Endearing, even. A little self-deprecating jab to lighten the mood. But it wasn't. It was confirmation. Of everything. I took a long sip of my water. I nodded along as the conversation moved on. No one noticed the way I clenched my jaw. No one asked how that felt. No one cared. That's when I made my decision. I had a card in my wallet. I'd printed it a week ago on instinct. It was folded in a clean white envelope, no markings, tucked beside my debit card. Just in case. Because some part of me must have known this would happen. Some part of me never really believed I'd get out of this dinner with my dignity intact. "Excuse me," I said, raising a finger. The waiter approached. "Could we get the check, please?" Her father looked surprised. "Don't worry, I've got it." "No," I said, smiling gently. "I insist." The waiter nodded and walked off. Sophia looked at me, curious. "Babe, it's fine." "I know," I said. A minute later, the waiter returned with the bill tucked in its leather folder. I took it without hesitation. And then, calmly, I reached into my inside pocket and pulled out the envelope. I placed it in front of her mother. "What's this?" she asked. "Just a little something to cover the night," I said. "And then some." She opened it. The moment she saw the document inside, her expression changed. Her breath caught. She read it once. Then again. Her eyes darted to Sophia. Then back to me. Her father leaned in. "What is it?" She handed it to him. His face went still, confused. The card was a donation receipt. Official. Certified. A $25,000 donation in Sophia's name, complete with a printed letter of thanks from a national nonprofit dedicated to women's education and mentorship. I'd wired the money 3 days ago, anonymously at first, but I added her name at the last minute. Figured it would make more of a statement. "To support future women in leadership," I said, sipping my water. Seemed appropriate. Sophia's mouth hung open. "You what?" "I figured if I'm going to be the charity case," I said, smiling, "might as well pay it forward." No one laughed. The silence was thick, stunned. Her father blinked. "You gave how much?" 25, I said. "Clean. Tax deductible." Sophia stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. "You did that in my name?" "I did." "Why?" she whispered. "Because," I said, rising slowly from my chair, laying the signed check on top of the folder. "Sometimes, the best way to show someone what you're worth is to let them put a price on it." I turned to the waiter. "Everything's covered." And then I left. No scene. No shouting. Just that envelope sitting like a lit match on a pile of dry kindling. We didn't speak on the ride home. Sophia drove. Fast. Her knuckles tight around the wheel. Her jaw clenched like she was chewing the silence instead of breaking it. The glow from the dashboard lit her face in short pulses. I sat in the passenger seat, calm in a way that felt alien. Like I'd stepped outside my body and left the wounded version of me back at the restaurant. The only sound was the wind, and even that felt tense. She didn't say a word until we pulled into our parking garage. The second the engine stopped, she exploded. "What the hell was that?" I didn't answer right away. I reached into the back seat, grabbed my coat, opened the door. She followed me upstairs, rapid footsteps, demanding an answer with every breath. "Was that a setup? Was that your little revenge moment?" I opened the door to our apartment, stepped inside, and flicked on the lights. The place looked exactly the same as it had when we left, but it felt different now. Off. Like the furniture knew what happened. She slammed the door behind her. "Answer me." I turned around, slowly. "You called me your charity case." "It was a joke," she yelled, throwing her purse on the couch. Everyone laughed. "Exactly," I said. "They laughed at me, Sophia." "No, they didn't," she started, but I cut her off. "They did. And so did you. And don't pretend you don't know what that meant." She crossed her arms, still flushed. "You embarrassed me in front of my entire family." I stepped closer, calm but firm. "No, Sophia. You embarrassed me. In front of people who already didn't respect me. You made it easy for them." She blinked, stunned by the shift in tone. Maybe she'd expected me to beg, to apologize for making her uncomfortable. That's how these fights used to go. Me trying to de-escalate, her talking in circles until I doubted myself. But not this time. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "That envelope stunt. That was petty. You humiliated my mom." "She called me a project," I snapped. "You think I didn't hear that? Last time we had dinner, she said you always bring home these projects. You know what that means." She looked down, said nothing. "Your dad asked if I had a real job, again. Liam thinks everything I say is funny. And you?" I laughed. "You love it. You like being the one who dated down." "That's not true," she said, her voice cracking a little. "But you said it yourself," I pressed. "I'm sweet. I try. You said I'm humble, that I'm not like the others. You didn't choose me because you respected me. You chose me because I made you feel generous." "That's not fair," she whispered. No, I said. It's not. And it hasn't been for a long time. She sank onto the edge of the couch, rubbing her temples. I didn't think it would go that far, she murmured. I didn't think you'd donate in my name. I wanted them to feel something, I said. Anything close to what I felt every time I've walked into one of their homes or restaurants, and had to smile through being measured. Every time they looked at me like I was lucky to be there. She looked up at me, finally, really looked. Her eyes weren't angry anymore. They were scared. Are we done? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I walked into the bedroom, opened the closet, pulled down the old duffel bag from the top shelf. Wait, she said, standing now. What are you doing? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam anything. I just folded shirts. Grabbed my laptop. My charger. You're not even going to talk about it? She asked, following me. We're talking now, I said. You're just leaving? I need space, I said. To think. Without being laughed at. Without pretending. She stood there, silent. Like she didn't know how to stop it, because she didn't know where it had started. I zipped the bag. Slung it over my shoulder. At the door, I turned to her one last time. Maybe I am a charity case, I said. But I'm not yours. Not anymore. And I walked out. Down the hall. Down the elevator. Into the street, where the cold air hit my face like a slap I'd needed for months. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just walked. And with every step, I felt it lift. Not the pain, but the performance. Because I'd finally stopped auditioning for people who only applauded when I stayed small. The morning after I left, I woke up on my friend Raj's couch with a stiff neck and the kind of clarity that only shows up after you've burned a bridge and watched the smoke settle. His apartment was small, barely 2 rooms, but it felt like a cathedral compared to the quiet tension I'd been living in for the past year. I stretched, drank the bitter coffee he handed me, and said the only thing that felt honest. I think I might have started a war. He raised an eyebrow. You mean the dinner? I dropped a 25 grand bomb on the table, I said. In front of her parents. Raj whistled low. Damn, you didn't just walk out. You detonated the whole building. I wanted to laugh, but it caught in my throat. Because part of me was still shaking, still unsure if I'd gone too far, still trying to figure out if justice was supposed to feel this lonely. By noon, my phone started buzzing. First with a text from Sophia. Can we talk? Please don't post anything. Then a missed call. Then another. I didn't answer. By the afternoon, mutual friends started reaching out. Bro, what happened last night? Did you really make a donation in her name? You made her dad choke, man. It spread faster than I expected. Group chats lit up. Someone's cousin had been dining 2 tables over. Her mom told her bridge group. Liam told everyone. The story wasn't just a story. It was a spectacle. In their circles, I wasn't just the boyfriend anymore. I was the humiliation. The scandal. The petty tech guy who made a scene at Kavanaugh's and weaponized philanthropy. That's what Sophia called it in a voice message she left later that day. I just don't get why you had to make it public, she said, voice strained. You could have just told me how you felt. Instead, you turned dinner into a TED Talk on class warfare. She paused, then added, almost too softly to catch. You really hurt me. I listened. Twice. And for a moment, I felt it, guilt. Not because she didn't deserve to be called out, but because I knew she genuinely didn't think she'd done anything wrong. That was the real heartbreak. Not the insult, not the laughter, but the fact that someone I loved could watch me bleed and still think the wound was just a scratch. That night, Raj and I ordered Chinese and sat on the floor, watching dumb comedies on mute. You gonna text her back? He asked. I shook my head. What's left to say? He hesitated. You still love her? I didn't answer. Because love, in that moment, felt like a word that belonged to a different language. Later, as I sat alone in the guest room, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Not Sophia. Her younger sister, Elise. We'd spoken maybe 3 times total. She was still in college, smart, observant, always quiet at family dinners, like she was watching from the edges. Her message was just 2 sentences. I saw what you did. Thank you. They needed that. I stared at the screen, reread it 3 times. It was the first kindness I'd been offered since the whole thing erupted. And it didn't come from Sophia. It came from someone who'd also been treated like furniture at those dinners. Someone who knew what it felt like to be smiled at, but not heard. I typed back. Wasn't sure anyone else noticed. Her reply came fast. We notice. We always notice. We just don't say it. Something about that hit harder than any insult her father had thrown. We just don't say it. The silence wasn't just Sophia's. It was structural, ingrained. In their family, power was quiet, judgment was polite, and disrespect came dressed in pearls and compliments. Elise saw the cracks, and maybe, in some way, she saw me as someone who kicked the door open, even if I burned on the way out. For the first time since the dinner, I let myself breathe deeply. Because even if I lost Sophia, I hadn't lost myself. It didn't take long for the story to mutate. Within a week, I wasn't the guy who stood up for himself. I was the one who attacked a family at dinner. At least that's how it sounded when a mutual friend forwarded me a voice note from Sophia's brother, Liam. She dodged a bullet, he said, half laughing. Dude was clearly insecure. Guys like that always snap when they feel outclassed. Outclassed. The word stuck to my ribs like spoiled meat. It wasn't just a dig. It was the story they were telling now. That I couldn't handle their success. That I lashed out because I was jealous. That I weaponized a charitable donation to feel superior. One of their family friends even posted a cryptic quote on Instagram that read, "Real class doesn't need to make a scene." Sophia liked it. I'd become a cautionary tale in a cashmere sweater. But what cut deepest wasn't the rumors. It was who believed them. A week after the dinner, I ran into Miriam, an old colleague of Sophia's, at a networking event. We hadn't planned to see each other. She looked surprised, then sympathetic. I heard what happened, she said, eyes softening. Tough situation. But you kind of knew what her family was like, right? I nodded. I did. She really did like you, she added, gently. They just expected someone else. Someone else. She didn't say richer. She didn't say more polished. But I heard it. I walked home that night thinking about that phrase. They expected someone else. And Sophia never corrected them. Never once said, he's enough. She let me audition every time I sat at their table. Every time I stayed quiet when they talked over me. Every time I smiled through a joke that hurt. And I had let her. Until I didn't. Raj found me in the kitchen that night, staring at my phone. You're spiraling, he said. I'm just reading. No, you're rehearsing conversations with people who've already made up their minds. I didn't respond. He sat down across from me. You want to win this? Stop chasing their version of you. I looked up. Everyone who matters saw what happened. You stood up for yourself. The rest? They're telling each other bedtime stories to sleep at night. That was the moment something in me shifted. Because he was right. I was still waiting for someone, anyone, to say, you were right to do it. I wanted validation. A clean resolution. But life doesn't hand those out. Not when money's involved. Not when appearances are currency. So I stopped answering texts. I logged out of social. I let the noise run itself dry. Instead, I threw myself into work. I took on 2 new clients. Put in late nights rebuilding my site, upgrading my pitch deck, tightening my contracts. And slowly, quietly, I started to feel solid again. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I checked it, my chest tightened. It was Sophia's mother. Her voice was brittle, controlled. Hello? I assume you won't be calling back, and that's fine. I just wanted to say, we didn't expect you to embarrass us. But I suppose we also didn't expect you to take things so personally. That's not how our family handles things. I do hope you find someone more suited to your temperament. I played it twice, then deleted it. She hadn't called to make peace. She'd called to reclaim the last word, to let me know that even now, after all of it, they still believed I was the problem, that I was too sensitive, too reactive, too emotional. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the blank wall in front of me. And for once, I didn't feel the urge to respond. I didn't need to. Because their silence, that voicemail, that was their truth. And mine was coming next. It had been 6 weeks since the envelope. The text stopped. The voicemail stopped. The gossip eventually moved on, as it always does. Sophia's family found something new to rally around. Probably Liam's new job or a vacation to somewhere curated and expensive enough to distract them from the memory of a man who walked away. Me? I was still in the same city. Still working. Still quiet. But no longer small. I moved into a new place. A 1-bedroom with a big window and floors that creaked like they were telling secrets. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Paid for with hours no one watched. No salary cushion. No old money. Just invoices. Just work. Just the quiet kind of pride that doesn't ask for permission. The first night I moved in, I opened a bottle of wine alone. I sat on the floor with a blanket over my shoulders, back pressed to the wall, and played music low. No voices. No criticism. No one asking what I did for a living like it was a personality test. And I thought about her. Not in the nostalgic, soft-focus way, but in the honest, sober way that comes when the adrenaline has dried up and you're left with the full weight of what was and what wasn't. Sophia hadn't reached out again. Not since that first message. She didn't try to explain. Didn't try to spin it. And I think that was the clearest closure of all. When someone says nothing, even after everything, they've said everything. There were moments when I missed her. Of course I did. Not the dinners, not the forced laughter, but the quiet moments. Her laugh in the morning, her bare feet on the tile, the way she used to touch the back of my neck when I worked late. I missed who she was when she wasn't performing. I missed who we were when the world around us went still. But I didn't want her back. Because now I understood something I hadn't before. Love without respect is just a beautiful form of control. She loved me, maybe, in her way. But she never respected me enough to protect me from her world. And I had allowed it. I had smiled through jokes. I had let myself be softened, edited, made palatable. Until I didn't. The charity donation? It wasn't revenge. It was closure, folded neatly into an envelope. It was me saying, here's what your project can do. And here's where it ends. A few weeks later, I ran into Elise again. This time in person, outside a bookstore downtown. She smiled, nervous at first. Hey. I nodded. Hey. We talked for a minute, surface stuff. How school was going. Her internship. Then she said, softly, I still think you did the right thing. I looked at her, grateful. I'm just sorry you had to do it alone, she added. I shrugged. Not alone anymore. She smiled. Good. We parted ways, but something about that moment stuck with me. Because it reminded me that sometimes, when you draw a line in the sand, someone you didn't expect ends up standing beside you. Not everyone's meant to go with you, but someone always notices when you stop shrinking. A month after that, I met a few friends for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a little Italian spot with paper menus and a chalkboard wall. Real place, real food, real people. When the check came, I reached for it out of habit. Nope, Raj said, smacking my hand away. Your drama bought me 3 weeks of entertainment. I got this. We all laughed, real laughter. No tension. No performance. No charity. I leaned back in my chair, let it wash over me. The ease. The air. And as we walked out into the night, I caught my reflection in the window. Not polished. Not perfect. But clear. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove. Just a life to live. With the door shut behind me, and no envelope left to slide across the table. If you've ever been laughed at, minimized, or treated like you should be grateful to be included, this story's for you. Sometimes the quietest person at the table is the one carrying the most power. And when they finally choose to speak, it changes everything. If you've ever drawn a boundary and walked away, share your story in the comments. Let's talk about what self-respect looks like when no one else is clapping.